Hi again. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the PRs which didn't really go anywhere. Uh, I'll focus only on three PRs, but well, actually these three were the only one which involved some substantial effort. Other than that, the other PRs basically were smaller or just a stand-in for a different PR because I wanted some review or I was just experimenting or trying things out. But these three were the ones which I feel I could have done better, but I didn't know enough at the time. So yeah, let's talk about it. uh, okay, so the first PR that we are going to talk about is this: make it possible to specify path name of defaults.eden. The purpose of this is basically, well, you can read it here, but I'll just summarize. It allows you to give a default setting to the server. uh, Mostly what I needed to do was okay, what I could achieve is this, and this wouldn't even compile. The problem was at the time I was not even running the tests. For me, the only way to run the tests was just go to the uh, project root and then do make dev. I was not using the capabilities of IntelliJ to keep the tests running or to only run tests on a specific namespace. I didn't know about any of that. I'll probably make a video on how to set up your IntelliJ to develop for Fulcro. So it might help you uh, get a get up to speed. So it might help you headaches as well. Uh, so yeah, eventually after this started, we have me and Tony connected, and he showed me how he has set up his intelligent environment, how he runs, what is his development and testing workflow. uh, so this was not a direct step forward, but it was definitely a learning curve. So this is what he did himself, like uh, this was on a video call, so I could ask him questions about how he's doing stuff, how is he approaching the problem, and he ended up implementing this. One of the things is that even if okay, let me so this was the main change which was expected, like only this much. However, sorry, there's a mosquito. However, the an interesting thing I learned that day itself is about the seek as well as the empty question mark. Empty, I mean, when I say empty question mark, it means this function in the closure core. So I would have definitely relied on that, but probably because Tony has had a lot more time working with closure, he understood that that's not really going to implement what uh, is actually needed. So in this case, we need seek function, and yeah, so basically it calls other things and it creates a local binding and uses that binding with a predefined or a function defined earlier in this namespace, and that was it. However, an interesting part now begins the interesting part. uh, I needed to implement tests for it. So as you can see, I couldn't even reach the testing part because I was not approaching this correctly. I basically created a uh, single name here, single localized name or identifier, but that wasn't enough. I needed to implement this logic, and I couldn't think of this logic at the time. So basically, this one to be precise. Anyways, moving on. I did approach something similar, I think. Nah, nothing, not even close. Yeah, so in the testing part, uh, this was the first time I was actually interacting or understanding how to use Fulcro-spec for developing Fulcro itself. I only thought that maybe spec is used for testing Fulcro applications. However, I didn't really realize at the time that Fulcro spec is used within the main project itself. So, uh, so this was way back when I was just getting started with the project. Later on, I had a good experience working with the Fulcro-inspect as well, and even then, I did not really rely on this. I used behavior, basically BDD, behavior-driven development kind of things, but uh, we relied on behavior assertion, specification things. But when mocking, I did not really need to mock anything, so that's that. This was my first exposure to the testing library, and yep, this was all. This sums up the first failed PR. Yeah, I would call it failed. Anyways, so let's close this. This was good learning experience. Another thing was, which was not directly related to the Fulcro source code, it was related to the Fulcro dev book, dev guide. You remember I talked about developing a preprocessor for the Fulcro, or not Fulcro, for the Asciidoc transcompilation pipeline. So it originally started because of, well, I have put forward the backstory in that video in the, I think, mid-sized PRs during open source phase. It's within the same playlist. So what this PR was supposed to do is to is to basically move over or modify the current examples in a way which created outputs, HTML and PDF, which was definitely a lot more reader friendly. So as a backup, I think I took 2 or 3 days on it, or yeah, 2 3 days on it. Yeah, so for as a backup, what I did is I basically ported over all of the current current pointers to the source code and put it in a file, uh, and b- and did the first level of expansion, which gave me all of the examples which were organized within that Asciidoc document after reading it from the source code itself. So I had all of the examples completely expanded within that one file, and after that, what I needed to do was basically create Vim macros and then run it over the file, and that pretty much did this completely. However, it was not elegant. Even though it got the job done, it was not something that would make me feel happy about the experience. Vim macros are nice, like if you want to go quick and dirty, you can do things, you can automate things that way. But a more professional or even a more honest approach towards doing things and automating things is through programming. So I went back to the full Asciidoc extensions uh, GitHub repo, and I combed it once again, and I tried to understand or dig deeper within the transcompilation pipeline, and finally I could understand how can I get this done, because I had done this by hand. I knew exactly, at this time I knew exactly what I needed to implement in the transcompilation pipeline. So this was a step forward actually, but this was not a successful PR, as it was, I closed it myself, I think. Yeah. So so all of the examples were completely expanded. You can see the same macro. Uh, yeah. So after, okay, let me rewind a little bit. So this was done on 30th, and on 1st, I created that extension, and this is how it started looking. And clearly, that was a better approach. I closed this one, and that one got merged. Uh, so yeah, so you can call this a failed PR. This is a failed PR, but it gave rise to another PR, which was very nice. So now we come to the last and the biggest one, which didn't work out so much. So this was the last major attempt for the of a contribution towards the project. As of now, what I did. Okay, let me give you a backstory. If you can see on this screen on the left hand side, there is a Fulcro app running, right? And it has 1,000 elements. I think 1,000, yeah, it is 1,000 elements. uh, However, when there are 1,000 elements, 1,000 React children within the Fulcro app, What happens is that when it connects to the Fulcro-inspect tool, by this time Tony had already released an electron application for Fulcro-inspect. Now I no longer need to use uh, Chrome extension. However, that has a good side and a bad side, I'll tell you. Uh, the good side is, well, I no longer have to rely on the extension. It might get broken tomorrow, or it might have problems, or like, it was not that handy actually. If I needed to inspect the application state, how was the networking looking, or other things within the Chrome DevTools, I would have to lose visibility over the current app state, which was not very nice. So once it got extracted into into an Electron application, uh, I was pretty much free to use the normal Chrome DevTools within Chromium. So let's come back to this one now, and imagine this: there is Shadow CLJS running in the background, which means you have a Java server, JVM, running in the background. There you can and it's hot reloading and compiling all of your Clojure script directly, and sending it to this localhost, port 3000. Then uh, this is how the workflow actually goes, but I'll tell you a little bit more about the setup required to make progress on this. So this is about profiling various aspects of a specific namespace, specifically data viewer or UI namespace, and the function we are trying to function we are trying to optimize is data viewer. So Tony created a video about it, how to optimize. It's a general video, but it tells you how to optimize Fulcro applications, or think about how to understand what is delaying your renderings, what is messing up your rendering cycle. Now, with all this background, I'll come to the main issue. When there are 1,000 or a large number of React children elements within the application, and when it connects to Fulcro-inspect, when you open it by clicking an arrow here, there is a noticeable time between time after that till it really opens all the way down. And if you click on one of the children here, it will take even more time. So this was not ideal. However, I don't expect anyone to be having a 1000 React 1000 elements as a child to any React element. But who knows, maybe uh, people have come up with certain situations. So okay, now I'll tell you about the dev setup. So there's this Electron app, there's a Chromium, there's IntelliJ running the build for Fulcro-inspect, because it had to be there so that this tool can be developed at the same time. And at the same time, there is another Shadow CLJS and all of that background process, all of those background processes running a Fulcro application. My laptop is a humble laptop. It only has 8 gigs of RAM. These were not sufficient. And there was a lot of latency and time lag for me to be able to be productive about it. Uh, Another reason that I was not able to contribute as well is because it is in Fulcro 2, so it hasn't been ported to Fulcro 3 yet. Uh, so it was frustrating for me and the lead dev as well, because this is something that people use. However, they might not come across this specific problem. But yeah, I couldn't get this done. So that's that. Uh, However, I did attempt at how to do this. Like again, I did certain optimizations, very tiny optimizations, and I wanted to profile the function at not function but profile the function at 3 different app states. So this is when this is after the first render, this is after the first tree is opened, this is after when a child of that this is when the second tree is opened, subtree, etc., to be more precise. But for the conversation. For now, let's just call it a set of nested trees. So the third tree took a lot of time. Second tree onwards, it took a lot of time. I did minor optimizations, but I couldn't really make any good progress on this. So it's been mentioned, and it's still not solved, I think. So it's mentioned on the Fulcro project roadmap. So if you feel like having a startup, I think it's a wonderful idea, wonderful starting point. But if you ask me, I would definitely uh, try to move away from Electron app. I know it has its benefits, but it also has its faults, because Electron eats up your RAM and so much. So it's not a very CPU friendly solution. However, there is another library, uh, right? So maybe this one. Let me confirm. Oh yeah, so this is a library which wraps JavaFX, and I think this is a much better candidate for creating something like Fulcro-inspect, because you can run it in the same Java process, just like you run the ghost wheel or guardrails, for example. So it eases out things a lot, but as of now, I haven't had the time to try this out or make any progress through this, because it requires you to have some knowledge of reframe, which is the other uh, closure script React framework slash library. I think library is a more correct term. So I think this might be a better option for creating that inspect, but yeah, it's again in reframe. Uh, so still stuck. I'm not working on the project anymore as of now. I'm focusing on other things, and I'll shortly be sharing videos about that as well. So I think this pretty much sums up this video series, and uh, I'll tell you that I've learned a lot in this process, and Pesto has done a great job of uh, having engineers, of giving engineers this kind of an exposure to actually go out, and they put us in touch with uh, open source project maintainers. So this is a very nice experience. I can't emphasize enough how much I learned, and I would definitely love to come back to the project after some time, and to be able to really contribute a lot more major PRs rather than minor, mid-sized and minor PRs. So let's see how things works out. Things work out. So thank you for watching. Uh, yeah, see you next time.